At every turn right now, Americans feel something is fundamentally unfair or wrong. Millionaires are becoming billionaires, while the price of groceries, rent, electricity, gas, everything, interest rates is going higher. The contradictions in American political system right now requires us to step back. And there is a lot of, well, contradictions. People feel that the rich have rigged the system. They want the government to step in. At the same time, people are crying about government overreach with flock cameras and want to kick AI data centers out. Americans are in revolt against the elites, against government, big business. And this is the scary part. Americans are in revolt against each other. Bringing the host of Batya airs 7 Eastern on Saturdays. Batya Ungar Sargon and NewsNation contributor, author of So What on Substack. Mr. Chris Cillizza, good to see you both. Batya, Americans are not an angry people. It's one of the things that makes us inherently exceptional. But we are very angry now. You can sense it no matter where you go and talk to folks. What exactly are they angry at?
Thank you so much for having me, Leland. It's great to be here. People feel that they've been written out of the future of this country. They feel that the gifts of the United States of America are still there, just not for them. That they're being given to everybody but them, which is infuriating because Americans work very, very, very hard. And it's coming out, as you pointed out in your wonderful introduction, in many different ways. This data center, it's a moral panic, right? I mean, a lot of the data does not support the way that people feel about it. In fact, there are wonderful stories about data centers revitalizing small towns that had sort of gone to seed. But people feel really angry because they've been cut out of the future of this country and cut out of the prosperity. And so it's coming out in all of these ways where they see people benefiting and they don't feel that they have access to that despite working so hard.
So, Liz, I think what Batya said is spot on. America, though, was not an envious place, right? And now, all of a sudden, the economic system, for only 60%, 60% think the U.S. economic system is unfair, only 40% fair. Who can get ahead in today's economy? 57%, just a few at the top, 43%, everyone. But what Batya said, I thought, was so spot on, because the AI data centers have done so much for so many cities, continue to, yet so many people are against them. And it kind of reminds me in the 90s and early 2000s when communities were outraged at Walmart's coming in, and they were going to fight against Walmart's because of offshoring and because they were going to save mom and pop businesses. And in the end, it was the towns that fought against them that got hurt the most. What's the difference between data centers and Walmart's?
Probably not all that much. I don't think we're an envious people, but I do think we are a fearful people at some level. And I mean that not in a pejorative way, but I do think to pick up where Batya left off, I do think there is a sense, right, that AI broadly is changing everything. They're told, you turn on the news, that everything's going to be changed. You're going to have to adapt. It may cost you your job. It may change the way your kids are educated. It may kill you. It may be a Terminator situation. I think that what you see, flock cameras and data centers, I think are very similar in this way. They are a physical manifestation of AI and the future to people. It's hard to get mad at chatgpt.com on your computer. You know what I mean? I guess you could punch your monitor, but when you see a data center go in, you see all the air conditioners. I see them all the time. I live 10 minutes from 50 of them in Virginia. When you see the flock cameras, I was just watching the footage, the guy bashing the flock camera. That's not about that camera or the technology, it's really about things are changing. I'm unsettled. I'm fearful of what that will mean, and I can't take it out on a website, right? I have to find something to take it out on, and I think that's why you're seeing it.
Yeah, and Donald Trump has made the point, if you're angry about AI and scared about it, and I think Chris's segment was excellent earlier, if you think that not enough is being done by AI, which this is not a left-right issue, it's broadly everyone should be worried about it, there's a lot of things to do, being angry at the data center probably isn't going to solve many of the problems. Here's President Trump today.
If I were the mayor of a town or the governor of a state and I had a chance to get a big plant in, an AI plant or a data center, I would absolutely want it because the jobs are enormous and the money paid, the taxes paid are just enormous. And if you don't take it, you're going to be left behind because there are plenty of places that want it. So I would say that maybe it can use a little public relations help.
I don't think it's the data centers that need the public relations help yet. I think that America never had an aristocracy. It's one of the reasons that America's middle class felt upwardly mobile, that anyone could break through. Now we feel like we have an aristocracy that the government is in bed with to protect. And that is what people are angry about. And the data centers represent that because of the amount of billions of dollars that we hear about being made in tech. And flock cameras represent it because it is the epitome of Chinese-like government surveillance. It is the elites and the government conspiring to track all of the minions.
I think you're spot on, Leland. I'll also say, in general, working class people do not have a lot of class resentment against billionaires who they often see as jobs creators. They have a lot of admiration for people who succeeded. However, when you yourself know that no matter how hard you work, you're going to have no money in your bank account at the end of the day, at the end of the month, no matter how hard you work, you're going to be lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how you are going to afford that next bill that you know is coming. That's when the resentment arises, and that is new in our nation. We always had amazing upward mobility, but now what we have is inherited wealth. The top 10% are very good at perpetuating their standard of living, and there's a lot less to go around for everybody else, and that breeds enormous resentment among people who work really hard and can't get ahead.
It's weird because go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to add, I always tell people this. It's a favorite party trick of mine. I ask people, by polling, who's the most popular current politician in the country? Like, not Barack Obama, not somebody who's not in office. And they're like, they guess. It's Bernie Sanders. And the reason for that is to speak to what Batya is talking about. I don't think that's because people want Medicare for all and the Green New Deal. And I think it's really, he taps into this sense of it's not just like, it's not aspirational anymore. It feels like these people are not just wealthy, it's I can't get there, and it's the reason I can't get there is because those people at the top are rigging the system against me. Like, again, I do think his popularity is entirely rooted in that sense. And I think the point you made is really important, Leland. It's really not a DR issue. Look, Donald Trump's populism and Bernie Sanders' populism are very similar. Now, they have different solutions, but the kind of person who would be drawn to those are not all that dissimilar.
Yeah. Well, that's what we saw in 2016 and continue to see is this anger is what unites both the far left and the far right. And it seems as though that anger, if we want to make it a kind of a graph of it or an image, that the anger is seeping up the horseshoe farther and farther. Chris, Batya, thank you both very much.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.